The world teaches you to smile, to be friendly, to be easy to approach. But when you are too easy, you become invisible, because people don't respect what they fully understand. They only respect what they cannot predict. This is not about aggression. It is not about violence. It is about presence. The kind of presence that makes people pause before they speak. The kind of presence that lingers after you leave the room. Machiavelli warned about this centuries ago. A ruler who is loved but not feared will always be vulnerable. And in modern life, it is the same. At work, in relationships, in friendships, in family. If people see you as harmless, they will test you. But if people see you as unreadable, they will respect you. This journey is about becoming that unreadable figure, quiet, disciplined, powerful, not through words, but through silence, not through anger, but through composure, not through control of others, but through control of yourself. Being kind is a strength. Being harmless is not. When you are harmless, people know they can use you. They push your limits because you will not push back. They talk over you because you will wait politely. They take without giving because they sense no danger in doing so. You were trained to be agreeable. Smile more, be nice, be available. But what is predictable becomes exploitable, and what is exploitable becomes disposable. Look back at your life. How many times did people ignore your boundaries until you enforced them? How many times did they return only after you became distant? That is the proof. They did not respect your goodness. They respected the risk of losing you. The world does not fear kindness. The world fears mystery. It does not bow to what it understands. It bows to what it cannot calculate. Think of a crowded room. Everyone talks loudly. Everyone tries to be noticed. But the quiet figure in the corner is the one people keep glancing at. Not because he entertains, but because he unsettles. He becomes the presence they orbit. This is the first step. Stop being harmless. Stop giving everything away. Stop showing your cards too early. Do not always explain. Do not always forgive. Do not always stay. Because every time you prove you are safe, they prove you are weak. Power begins when you refuse to be the easy option. When you stop being predictable. When people cannot measure you, they hesitate. And in hesitation, respect is born. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. Most people rush to fill the air with words. They defend themselves. They explain themselves. They overshare in the hope of being understood. But every extra word is a leak of power. The moment you explain, you reveal your vulnerability. The moment you defend, you admit the wound. That is why silence carries weight. It forces others to guess. It denies them closure. And what the mind cannot close, it replays endlessly. Machiavelli knew this truth. He wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because fear brings cruelty, but because fear brings respect. Respect born from unpredictability is stronger than affection born from kindness. Silence creates that unpredictability. When you do not react, others wonder what you are thinking. When you do not explain, others question their own behavior. When you do not chase, others start to follow. Think of the times you withdrew, when you stopped replying, when you left without explanation. Suddenly, people who ignored you before came searching, not because they loved you more, but because they feared the void you left. That is the power of silence. It turns your absence into a presence. It turns your distance into leverage. In conversation, the one who speaks less is listened to more. The one who pauses is anticipated. The one who doesn't rush gains authority, because silence demands patience, and patience signals strength. If you don't need to fill the space, you must not be desperate. If you don't need to answer, you must not be controlled. And if you cannot be controlled, you are respected. Silence unsettles the insecure. It makes the impulsive uncomfortable. It forces the loud ones to reveal more of themselves, because they cannot stand the stillness. They will talk more, overshare more, confess more, and all the while you remain unreadable. still, calm, present, but unreachable. This is how silence becomes a weapon without violence. It makes people cautious. It makes people careful. It makes people respect boundaries they ignored before. Because silence is not emptiness. It is presence without exposure. And in a world addicted to noise, silence is the sharpest edge. People do not fear what they fully understand. They fear what they cannot define. The mysterious person holds power because others cannot calculate him. They hesitate to test him. They overthink every reaction. They prepare themselves more carefully around him. Most people show too much too quickly. They share their goals, their weaknesses, their emotions. They prove themselves in the first 5 minutes. But what is visible can be predicted, and what is predicted can be controlled. Mystery is not about deception. It is about restraint. It is about choosing what to reveal and what to withhold. When you are unpredictable, people stay cautious. They never know which version of you they will face. One day kind, one day distant. One moment warm, the next unreadable. This inconsistency creates psychological tension. Tension makes people alert. It keeps them from becoming entitled. It forces them to respect boundaries without you ever naming them, because they don't want to risk crossing the side of you they haven't met yet. Think about the wolf and the dog. The dog is predictable, always loyal, always available, always safe. That is why it is loved but not respected. The wolf, on the other hand, is mysterious. It appears and disappears. It is calm yet dangerous. It is silent yet unforgettable. That is why people fear the wolf even when it does not attack. Mystery also creates obsession. When people cannot fully define you, they replay their experiences with you. They wonder what you meant. They dissect your silence. They project their own stories onto you, and every time they do, you live in their mind longer. To build mystery, you must resist the urge to explain. You must leave conversations slightly unfinished. You must disappear before you are fully understood, because closure ends curiosity. But incompleteness creates obsession. Mystery is not about being fake. It is about protecting your inner world. You do not need to reveal your motivations, your plans, your weaknesses. You can hint without confirming. You can smile without clarifying. You can respond with maybe instead of a full explanation. This way, people never feel they completely own you. They never feel they can fully predict you, and that uncertainty keeps them respectful. The mysterious presence does not need to raise his voice. He does not need to argue. His silence is enough to shift the energy. His unpredictability is enough to command caution. And in a world where everyone is trying to be seen, the one who cannot be defined becomes unforgettable. The greatest form of intimidation is self-control. Not anger, not shouting, not threats, but the refusal to be shaken. When others gossip, you stay silent. When they yell, you blink slowly. When they panic, you remain calm. When they insult, you smile faintly. This shows one thing. You cannot be moved. If you cannot be shaken, you cannot be controlled. If you cannot be controlled, you must be respected. Composure is not passivity. It is strength disguised as stillness. Think of a storm. The loudest winds scatter everything, but the mountain remains untouched. That mountain is composure, and people respect what cannot be moved. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should never reveal all his emotions. He should be careful with his reactions, because once people know your emotional triggers, they can pull them at will. And the one who is easy to provoke is easy to defeat. Composure turns provocation into their weakness, not yours. They try to upset you. They expect anger. They expect defense. But you give them nothing, and nothing is heavier than silence in the middle of chaos. This is how you change the dynamic. You stop being reactive. You start being calculated. You let others reveal themselves first. They rush to defend. They rush to justify. They rush to expose their insecurities. And while they unravel, you remain still. That stillness makes people second-guess themselves. It makes them regret their outbursts. It makes them question whether you saw more than you revealed, because composure suggests depth, and depth is intimidating. To master composure, you must practice restraint. Do not answer every insult. Do not justify every decision. Do not reveal every thought. Learn to pause before reacting. Learn to observe without responding. Learn to walk away without explanation. Composure is a habit. It is trained daily. It shows in the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you respond to stress. The more you practice it, the more it becomes your default. And soon, people will notice. They will whisper, "He never loses control." And in that whisper lies your power. Because composure is not silence alone. It is authority in silence. It is the ability to look at chaos and remain unmoved. It is the refusal to let others dictate your emotions. And when you master this discipline, you stop being a participant in games. You become the center around which the game revolves. Predictability is safe. Predictability is comfortable. And that is why predictable people are controlled easily. When others know exactly how you will respond, they stop respecting you. They know you will forgive. They know you will explain. They know you will stay. So they test you without fear. Inconsistency changes this. It makes people second-guess their moves. It keeps them careful. It forces them to respect you, even in your absence. This does not mean chaos. It does not mean cruelty. It means being unpredictable in a controlled way. One day, you respond warmly. The next, you remain distant. One moment, you offer kindness. The next, you disappear without explanation. This inconsistency unsettles people. It creates emotional instability, and instability turns into submission. Because when people cannot predict you, they cannot manage you. They cannot feel entitled to your presence. They cannot feel safe taking you for granted. Think of Machiavelli's advice. He praised allies one day and replaced them the next. He smiled in one conversation and vanished in the next. Why? Because consistency makes you forgettable. But controlled inconsistency makes you unforgettable. This is not about games. It is about creating psychological space. Space where others cannot pin you down. Space where they must treat you carefully because they never know which side of you they will meet. You do not need to explain your shifts. You do not need to justify your distance. You let the silence do the work. You let their imagination create the fear. People will ask themselves, was he testing me? Did I offend him? Is he disappointed? That questioning becomes your leverage. Because the moment someone starts replaying your behavior, they are under your influence. They are adjusting their actions to match your energy, and that is quiet control. To practice this, learn to step back unexpectedly. Leave conversations unfinished. Exit gatherings early. Respond slower than usual. Offer attention, then withdraw it. Not to hurt, but to remind others you are not fully accessible. This is how you become valuable. By scarcity, by inconsistency, by the simple fact that people never fully know where they stand with you. The predictable are used, the unpredictable are respected. And the balance lies not in being distant always, but in being distant enough that others never grow comfortable with your presence. Inconsistency is not weakness, it is strategic mystery. It is the reminder that your energy is a choice, not a guarantee. Presence has power, but absence has even more. Most people believe that showing up constantly earns respect. In reality, constant presence breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds entitlement. The dog is always there, loyal, predictable, visible, and that is why it is taken for granted. The wolf appears rarely, but when it does, everyone notices. And when it disappears, its absence is felt even stronger. This is the psychology of scarcity. When something is scarce, it becomes valuable. When something is constant, it becomes background noise. Think about the times you withdrew. You left the chat. You stopped attending the gatherings. You became silent for a while. Suddenly, people who ignored you before asked where you went. They noticed your absence more than they ever noticed your presence. Absence creates reflection. It makes people question their own behavior. It makes them realize how much of your energy they had been consuming without gratitude. It forces them to feel the gap you leave behind. But absence must be strategic. Too much withdrawal and you fade into irrelevance. Too little and you remain too accessible. The art is in the balance. Be present enough to remind people of your value. Be absent enough to make them feel the risk of losing it. This is how power shifts, not by shouting, not by demanding, but by disappearing without warning, by letting silence do the teaching, by letting absence create weight. When people feel the loss of your presence, they begin to respect it. They realize you were not an accessory. You were a center of gravity, and gravity is only noticed when it is gone. To build this habit, stop overstaying in places where your energy is unappreciated. Leave conversations before they drain you. Walk out of rooms without needing to announce why. Withdraw from those who exploit your openness, not with anger, but with stillness, with cold professionalism, with silence that cannot be negotiated. Absence also sharpens presence. When you do show up again, people pay attention. They lean in. They weigh your words differently. Because you are no longer ordinary, you are rare, and rarity is priceless. Machiavelli understood this scarcity effect. He knew the power of withdrawing strategically. He knew people fear losing what they cannot control, and your absence reminds them that you are never fully theirs. Presence creates attention. Absence creates obsession. Use both carefully, and people will learn to respect you not only when you arrive, but especially when you leave. Fear alone is fragile. Respect alone is weak. But when you combine them, you create lasting influence. If people only fear you, they will obey in public, but betray in secret. They will comply while secretly waiting for your downfall. They will smile while planning your failure. This is short-term power. If people only respect you, they will admire your skills but push your boundaries. They will praise your leadership, but expect you to always give more. They will treat your kindness as a guarantee. This is admiration without weight. The true balance lies in tension. That subtle edge between calm and danger, between warmth and distance, between respect and fear. The most powerful people walk with this tension. They do not shout, they do not threaten, they do not beg. They remain calm but not completely safe. They remain kind but not completely available. This is what keeps others cautious. Machiavelli understood this balance. He knew that fear without respect breeds rebellion. He knew that respect without fear breeds entitlement. So he built a posture of tension, the kind that whispers, "I could destroy you, but I choose not to." This tension forces people to treat you carefully. They measure their words. They calculate their tone. They hesitate before crossing you, not because you punished them, but because you might. Your strength lies not in action, but in potential. Not in what you do, but in what they think you are capable of doing. And potential is always stronger than proof. To cultivate this, be consistent in your control, but inconsistent in your emotion. Always calm, but not always warm. Sometimes amused, sometimes unreadable. Sometimes generous, sometimes silent. This unpredictability forces respect. When you do speak, be precise. End arguments with one sentence, not 50. Correct mistakes once, not repeatedly, then disappear. Your words will echo longer than noise ever could. When you withdraw, do it without warning. No threats, no announcements, just distance. This teaches people to value your presence before they lose it again. When people compliment you, accept it without dependency. A nod, a brief smirk, no need to melt, no need to deflect. This shows you already know your worth. Their words are acknowledgement, not validation. This is the final stage, not cruelty, not arrogance, discipline. Because true power is not when others obey out of fear. It is when they adjust themselves out of respect for what you might do. The tension remains, and in that tension lies presence that cannot be forgotten. You have seen the difference between being liked and being respected, between being safe and being a presence, between being the dog and being the wolf. We explored the trap of being harmless, the quiet weapon of silence, the mystery that unsettles. the composure that intimidates, the power of inconsistency, the weight of absence, and finally the tension between fear and respect. This is not about cruelty. It is not about violence. It is about discipline. It is about presence. It is about becoming unreadable enough to be respected and rare enough to be remembered. Because true power does not shout. True power does not beg. True power is still silent, mysterious. It is the presence that lingers even after you leave the room. So remember, you do not need to bark. You only need them to believe you might bite. And that belief is stronger than any argument you could ever make. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Psychology Insights. Here we break down the strategies of the mind, the power of presence, and the psychology of influence. Stay disciplined, stay unreadable, and become unforgettable.